You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is David Smith. He's the senior analyst for the Morgan Report, which you can find online at silver-investor.com. Welcome to the show, David.
It's great to be back, Jim.
Well, I know usually we're talking about gold, silver, palladium, platinum. Today, it's Cyprus. And you go, how much precious metal is there? Well, how much is there of anything when it comes to the financial system there, Dave?
Well, there's something that's more valuable and precious and irreplaceable than the precious metals, and that is confidence. And I think when this is going to play out over really days, weeks, and months, the implications of this are just profound. And it's not like it's the first time that something kind of like this has happened before in terms of theft. It's a different twist on it, but I think it's going to be, as it gets out there and is analyzed, and as the average person in the street starts thinking about it and understanding what's happened, it's going to strike at the core of confidence of people all around the world, of financial confidence because of what's happened.
Well, Cyprus was a well-known tax haven, so I imagine some people had very large bank accounts there. And they're talking about taxing those bank accounts now. A certain percentage, 6.75% if you have less than 100,000 euros in the bank, and nearly 10% of your holdings if you have more than 100,000. The problem being is that the European banking system guarantees the first 100,000 euros of your account. Now, if they start dipping into their accounts in Cyprus, people are, I'm sure, are worried across Europe that they're going to do the same thing to them.
Well, that's true, and this is not just a tax, it's literally theft. And to just a quick reprise for listeners, on Friday, March 16th, the government of Cyprus decided to give bank customers what they called a haircut. Because they're deeply in debt, and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, said, you've got to get your house in order. And so they basically are going to steal 10% of the customer's money from their account. And the way they phrased it was really amazing. They go, the Cypriot president defended the decision, and he said, quote, "We found it justified in terms of burden sharing to also involve the depositors. As it is a contribution to the financial stability of Cyprus, it seems just to ask a contribution of all deposit holders." Ask? So it's like you're walking down the street and a mugger, knocks you to the ground, steals your wallet, and takes most of your money and says, I'm just asking for some money. And what are you going to do? You're going to say no? And so this is a massive attempt to basically rob people, and then tell them that you're asking for their participation. You didn't get any option. And people, and get this, the insiders, the big depositors, a lot of them heard a couple days before that this was going to happen, and billions of euros fled the banking system the day before Friday night while it was open. And so average depositors, they get to go to the ATM machine, and what little money was there, take a little bit out. The electronic funds transfer was frozen, and they have a bank holiday that's supposed to open up tomorrow. Who knows? They said Thursday. We don't know if it's this Thursday. So what this really does, the IMF and the Cypriots have made a massive mistake, because now where are they going to go with this? They can backtrack, they can do all sorts of stuff, but Pandora's box has really been opened here, and anybody who can take time away from watching soap operas all day long can see that they themselves can be next in line in the middle of a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday night to wake up and find out that their deposits, which are supposedly insured, as you mentioned, have been hijacked.
Well, and then you say, of course, that really, takes away any confidence you might have had in the economy.
When confidence is lost, all is lost. And the reality is, globally, we've been involved in a giant financial con game for quite some time now. But when the con part becomes obvious to people, they lose the confidence. You know yourself, when you have trust in somebody that you work with or some business that you go to, and when that trust is misplaced, it can just shatter overnight, and it might have taken years to get there, and it can go away just like that. So anybody who's got any sense has to be asking in Europe, Who's next? Is it the Greek depositors? Is it the Italians? Is it the French? And not only is it, but when? Because their financial house is in such a giant mess, the only way they can get out of it is either by declaring game over or by continuing to come out with these euphemisms and then eventually to steal the money directly from honest depositors who didn't get us in this mess, but are supposed to bail out the banksters.
Where does this money go that's being raised?
Well, supposedly it goes to make the country more stable, but the banks themselves were the ones that made the mistakes by investing in Greek debt and accepting a lot of hot money from different countries. And so, why shouldn't the bankers pay? And so, and get this, they're going to give the depositors, they said that we'll give you some bank stock in relationship to some of the money we took out of your account. And these banks are just on life support. So it's just insult after insult. And anybody, we've talked about this, how gold and silver and platinum and palladium, they are insurance policies. Do you think somebody could take 10% of your gold or your silver that you have in your own hand? You think a banker could come in and do that? But when it's in an account, when it's in even allocated resources, it's always possible because a piece of paper stands between you and your metal. But if you have it in your own hand, if you have it stored in a bank deposit box, if you have it buried in a hole in the ground, they're not going to get it. And that's what gold has done for thousands of years. It's been the honest broker of last resort for people's finances. And anybody that doesn't own some precious metal now and doesn't go right out after this and get some is worse than naive. They're just plain stupid.
Now, you were saying that this also has geopolitical ramifications about who's going to help Cyprus now deal with its massive debt.
They put themselves in a position from which there's no rational exit. They have crossed the Rubicon, as David Franklin said of Sprott Asset yesterday, that they've crossed the depositors' Rubicon. There's no going back from this. They've created a new precedent. And so if the Russians have said, oh, we'll help you out, we'll buy your banks. Well, what that means is a price to pay for what the Russians would do, and they could end up with a naval base in the middle of the Mediterranean, which is anathema to the British and the U.S. And so also that would, if they did that, that would delegitimize the IMF, which is already illegitimate in a lot of people's views, but it would make them look even more impotent than ever. And they've gotten into this by the fact that they would not recognize when the problem was manageable that somebody has to fail and then we go on with our lives. And so by not doing that, they've created a monster, and it gets bigger and bigger, and now it's out of control. The monster is not going to be put back into the box. And so they have nowhere to turn except more smoke and mirrors, and maybe they can push this down the road for a while, but it's inevitable that there's going to be a massive financial disaster because of what's been going on.
For the last 300 years, the Russians have been looking for a warm water port, and that would just be perfect for them, wouldn't it?
It would be incredible, and as a serious student of history, I find this to be totally fascinating. But I recommend that people read what Jim Sinclair has been saying, what Sprott Asset has been saying. The people that are really keeping tabs on this, David Morgan has been discussing it, and you're going to hear a lot more about this. And everybody listening to this has a responsibility, I believe, to make themselves fully informed about what's going on and ask themselves, how can this affect me? Because if they think this is just something that takes place on a little island in the Mediterranean, then because they have a quote, insured account in Canada or the United States, they need to think again. They need to go and read their money market funds small print to see that the government has all sorts of breaks, which they've instituted since the 2008 meltdown, which can keep you from taking out more than a small amount of your account at a time, can take months to give you your money back, can substitute other things for it. So this is really, really serious. And if you care enough about your money, and nobody cares more about it more than you do, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to make myself more safe? And in my view, one tactic of this and one strategy is to own some precious metals. It doesn't mean go out and mortgage your house, but it means keep enough in precious metals and enough in cash in hand that you can survive during the interim when these things fall out of bed. It's always on a weeknight. That's thieves operate in the night. They don't do it in the middle of the day. These guys wouldn't do it when the bank was open. They did it on a Friday night. They'll do it on a Saturday or a Sunday night when they know that people can't respond. And of course, the insiders already get the information and they respond. So that's even more immorality that's involved there.
Gee, sounds like when they moved the Colts, the NFL franchise, in the middle of the night.
Well, it is, and so this is not overreacting to what's going on. We're not being Pollyannish here. You just have to pay attention. And the price for your financial survival is making yourself educated, coming up with a plan, and then acting on that plan, whatever it is for you. The Chinese have a saying, which I love. They say, to know and not do is the same as not knowing. So if you know what's going on and you don't do anything, you don't know, and the results are going to be the same.
Well, just thinking back to the Russians again, possibly asking for a naval base in Cyprus, that's going to cost taxpayers in North America and Britain more because NATO would have to increase its presence there in the Mediterranean just to counter the Russian possibility of whatever threat. And with Putin, you never know what he's going to do.
We virtually have a new Cold War developing, and this time it's not just a military Cold War, it's a financial one. And gold is going to come to play a very important role in that. Why do you think the Russian Central Bank has been buying more and more gold almost every month for years? You look at their gold reserves and they go up. They know that gold is going to be the financial piece of last resort, and the Chinese understand this as well, too. So this is really fascinating from a historical standpoint, but it's more than fascinating from our wallets. And if we don't do the research and make decisions that fit for us, then we don't have a right to complain to anybody else. And do you know that New Zealand is considering, and they publicized this, their financial minister, they're talking about setting up the same type of infrastructure that Cyprus just did in case they need to do this. So all bets are off now, and everybody, the ball is in play, and what reigns is the unknown. We've stepped into an abyss. And we don't know where the bottom is, and we don't know where we're going to end up or if we can hang on to that edge.
Well, for an average person, the thought of the government being able to dip into your bank account willy-nilly without any accountability for it, that is scary stuff. And you watch the TV shows, the Doomsday Preppers, people laugh at them, and they say, well, I've got a bucket full of gold buried next to my bunker. And, when money doesn't work anymore, I'll still have, some way of getting supplies and goods.
Well, Chris Powell of GATA said, there are no markets anymore, just manipulations. And he's so right. And when he said it, there were a few markets that maybe weren't being, but now everything is in play. So it's just, we're moving to a new level in this situation, and it virtually guarantees that you're going to see massive upside movements in the precious metals as more and more people get it, and as they take more and more of their money to make it safe by having the only reality in the world financially that nobody else has a call on it but you. There's nobody standing between you and the metal that you hold in your hands.
And it would be nice if you could do that. Of course, some countries have laws saying that you can't physically hold gold. It has to be in a central depository.
That's true, and they're adding, like in Vietnam and in India, they're trying to add more taxes. But you see, this is the government seeing that the people are getting it, and they're trying to put a brake on that. But in the day of the Internet and instant communication globally, you and I can talk to somebody on Skype in Mongolia or in Africa, and it doesn't even cost us anything if they have Skype, and we can see them. So these centralized governments are fighting a losing battle, but this is a massive battle, and there will be many casualties. And people who know and don't act, or who don't know, they're going to be roadkill. They're going to be killed on the battlefield because this is a financial battle. And so you've got to take the time, if you value your own financial survival, and you can't pay attention to when the government says something. The more they say, oh, we're not going to do this, then you should quake in your boots because you know they're lying in their teeth.
And, I was just looking at South Korea as well, a massive cyber attack on their banking system. What if something like that happened at the same time the government was trying to dip its fingers in your bank account?
Exactly. There are so many black swans flying around that it almost blots out the sun. And so we just have to pay attention, we have to come up with a plan, and we have to act on it. and staying informed. And anybody who doesn't want to take that kind of time, well, that's just what it is, and don't come complaining to your neighbor.
Yeah, well, they won't have any money to get from you anyway, or for you to get from them.
Possibly so.
Very scary thing that's happening in Cyprus. It could spread across Europe. David mentioning New Zealand is thinking about setting up an apparatus, so they might be able to do that as well. And I don't see how that's going to help investor confidence on either side of the globe.
No, it's not. And I remember what the Cheshire Cat told Alice in Alice in Wonderland. He said, a word means exactly what I say it means, nothing less and nothing more. And, you know, we talked about euphemisms in one of our earlier House Street shows, and here we go. We just have more euphemisms to add to that rogues gallery of strange terms that mean exactly the opposite of what we think they mean.
Yeah, it's like the military servicing a target. It sounds like they're bringing them catered lunch.
Yeah.
A catered lunch that's, 200 kilos of high explosive.
Right. And, one of the people in Cyprus said, they call Sicily the island of the mafia. It's not Sicily. It's Cyprus. This is theft, pure and simple. This is a pensioner that had seen, their money. And their money has already been undercut by inflation, which is another act of printing money that has nothing behind it. So this is just absolutely stunning, and it's going to get worse and worse, and there'll be periods of calm, like the eye of a storm, and people go, oh, it's over, and it's not a problem, and that you have to realize it's not over. It's not over until it's over.
Well, Richard Knowles, who I also interview on a weekly basis for HowStreet.com, he said one of the problems we have here in North America is the media is so caught up on Britney Spears' latest hairstyle, they don't have time or the will or the effort to tell us what's going on in Europe or Asia in these delicate market times, so that you have a heads up. By the time we hear about it in the mainstream media, it's too late to do much about it.
That's exactly true, and they have 25 seconds, to talk about something on the news. You and I we spend 12, 15, 20 minutes, really getting into the details of some of these things. And so, by definition, you got to have more time to pay attention. I've as a real serious student of history, I've always loved some of the trenchant quotes that I've run across, and I remember reading what Winston Churchill said at the beginning of World War II. He said, and he wrote a couple of books, and he said, "This is the beginning of the end." When they first won their few important victories against the Nazis and the Japanese, but before that, he said, "This is the end of the beginning." And so what we have now, we do have the beginning of the end, because Cyprus and what's gone on with MF Global in the United States and a few other things, this has put us to the place where there's a crumbling of the financial Ponzi scheme that's going on globally in all different aspects. And this is going to involve a global rededication of the debt. It's going to have to be swept away and a new system put in. And it's going to be like a giant wave that carries out that tsunami that hits the wave at the first time it hits the beach, and then it goes back out. The water's clean, and it goes back out carrying all the garbage that it broke up when it hit the beach, broken chairs and buildings and all
Harley
sorts of
Davidson motorbikes.
Exactly. And then it comes back in. You see, people go, oh, look, the water went out. Let's go out and pick up the starfish. And they walk out onto the beach, and the water's gone out, but it comes back in again, and it's a massive, dirty, filthy wave with all the garbage in it, and it wipes out people that walked out on the beach. So this is, when the calm happens after what's happened in Cyprus, that's that wave going out. And don't you think that it's all over, because it's not. You've got to get ready for the really dangerous, destructive wave that's going to come in, and it's going to wipe out everybody who didn't prepare themselves and who walked out on the beach rather than going to high ground.
I know a lot of people mention, Cyprus, it's a tiny place, its place in the world's financial scheme is so tiny it won't affect people. And, as you said, there's a real deep feeling. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
When the Great Depression got underway in the 1930s in Europe, it was the Credit Anstalt Bank that failed, a little bank. It's always something that happens on the margin. But you see, it can't make a difference. Cyprus wouldn't make a difference if the financial system of the IMF was sound. But it's rotten to the core, And so when this is a symptom. This is not a cause if there's a massive collapse. This isn't the cause of it. This is just a display of the symptom, because the whole system is dysfunctional and it's immoral and unethical, and it's doomed to fail. And the longer it's put off, the bigger the failure will be.
We're going to keep an eye on it. Thanks a lot for chatting with us, David. My guest has been David Smith. He's the senior analyst for the Morgan Report, which you find online at silver-investor.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, and you can contact us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.